Imagine holding your newborn baby in your arms and having absolutely no way to know if it's really yours. Not your wife, not your family, not even you could prove it. For almost 300,000 years, this wasn't just a question, it was humanity's greatest unsolved mystery. Today, one tiny DNA test can answer it in minutes, but for almost all of human history, that certainty simply didn't exist. So how did ancient humans decide who the father was? The answer is far stranger than you think, because before science, millions of people genuinely believed a child could have more than one father. Long before humans understood sperm, eggs, or fertilization, they still had to explain one of life's biggest mysteries, where babies came from. And without science, they invented their own answers. Across parts of the Amazon, some indigenous tribes believed every man who had relations with a pregnant woman contributed something to the growing baby. That meant a single child could officially have two, three, or even more fathers. Today, that sounds completely impossible, but modern anthropology discovered something shocking. Children recognized as having multiple fathers were actually more likely to survive. Why? Because instead of depending on one hunter, they received food, protection, and care from several adult men. But that system wouldn't last forever. Because around 12,000 years ago, humanity invented something that changed everything. They started farming, they raised animals, they owned land. For the first time in history, families had something worth passing on, and suddenly, one simple question became incredibly expensive. Who inherits everything? If nobody knew who the real father was, who got the land? Who inherited the animals? What had once been a biological mystery became an economic crisis. To solve it, societies didn't discover DNA, they created rules. Marriage became stricter, and adultery became one of the most serious crimes imaginable because uncertainty threatened inheritance. One of the oldest examples appears in the Code of Hammurabi, written almost 3,800 years ago. If a married woman had a relationship with another man, the punishment could be death, because one child with an unknown father could throw an entire family's wealth into chaos. Looking back today, many traditions that seem purely religious or cultural actually began as practical attempts to solve one biological problem. But even with all these laws, there was still one problem. Nobody could actually prove who the father was. So civilizations eventually stopped chasing biological truth and invented something even more powerful: legal truth. The Romans came up with a solution that would shape the world for thousands of years. Instead of asking, "Who is the biological father?" they asked a much simpler question: who is the husband? If a child was born during a legal marriage, the husband was automatically recognized as the father, whether he was the biological parent or not. But humans were never satisfied with assumptions. They wanted proof. Before modern genetics, people searched for clues everywhere. They compared faces, eye color, personality, anything that might reveal who the father really was. One of the strangest methods appeared in ancient China: a drop of the man's blood, a drop of the child's blood. Both were placed into a bowl of water. If the drops merged, people believed they were related. If they stayed apart, they weren't. It looks convincing, but it was completely wrong. Modern biology shows blood mixing has absolutely nothing to do with paternity. It never did. It wasn't science. It was hope. The first real breakthrough arrived in the early 1900s, when scientists discovered blood groups could eliminate some possible fathers. But they still couldn't identify the real one with certainty. Then, one of Hollywood's biggest scandals changed everything. Adam Charlie Chaplin was accused of fathering a child. Blood tests clearly showed he couldn't be the biological father, yet the court ignored the science and still declared him legally responsible. Everything finally changed in 1984. DNA fingerprinting was invented. For the first time in human history, fatherhood could be identified with more than 99.99% accuracy. A mystery that haunted humanity for hundreds of thousands of years could suddenly be solved with a tiny DNA sample. But solving one mystery created another. Is biology more important than the person who raised you? Can one laboratory result erase years of love, sacrifice, and trust? Maybe that's the real lesson. For most of human history, civilization wasn't built on certainty. It was built on belief. DNA can tell us who created a child, but only people can decide who truly becomes a father. If you had lived 10,000 years ago, would you have trusted tradition or spent your entire life wondering if the child was really yours? If this video made you think, subscribe for more what-if stories every week.